What if I revealed that the opulent chambers of the British monarchy hide more than centuries-old customs? That beneath the polished stone floors and ornate chandeliers, something ancient and unearthly has been orchestrating events for generations. Picture yourself within those walls, believing you're just another unnoticed servant, only to catch a fleeting glimpse of something so unnatural it shatters your perception of reality forever. Welcome to Tales of Mythology, where ancient myths, buried terrors, and otherworldly conflicts spring to life. If you're captivated by the hidden facets of folklore, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon below to stay updated with every epic tale. Shadows. Music. In the late 90s, I was nobody significant, just a minor assistant who'd landed a role in the royal household after years of unremarkable bureaucratic work. My instructions were clear: stick to the rules, blend into the background, and never pry. That was simple until my silence turned me into a specter among them. People overlooked my presence. They murmured, debated, and sometimes let secrets slip. The palace felt oppressive from the moment I entered. Hallways adorned with old paintings seemed to stare at me. The air, heavy with the scent of wax and ancient stone, clung to my chest. But the weightiest burden wasn't the splendor, it was the unspoken code: don't question. I soon learned what to ignore. Doors sealed without reason. Passageways cleaned until the stench of bleach stung my eyes. Guests who slipped through without appearing on any official roster. And at night, faint, rhythmic sounds reverberated through the corridors, like far-off machinery or a living pulse. Initially, I convinced myself this was just palace life, layers of secrecy to safeguard tradition. But that illusion shattered one balmy summer night during a garden event. The crowd was small, foreign envoys, top officials, yet the atmosphere crackled with unease. Senior staff, usually composed like statues, exchanged anxious whispers, their gazes darting toward a secluded gazebo. When I asked a footman what was amiss, his face drained of color. He mumbled something incoherent and hurried off. Then I saw the man in the gray suit. I'd memorized the guest list. His name wasn't there. His pale, almost ghostly eyes met mine, piercing right through me. When the Queen personally welcomed him, a rare occurrence, their hushed exchange was cut short by her glance in my direction. For a fleeting moment, her face contorted into something utterly alien. My gut turned to ice. I chalked it up to the twilight glow. I shouldn't have. Later, while clearing the gazebo, something metallic glinted in the moonlight on the grass where they'd stood. A small, coin-sized object etched with bizarre, otherworldly markings. Protocol dictated I report it. Instead, I pocketed it. Curiosity trumped caution, a decision I'd come to rue. A week later, tucked in a quiet library nook, I overheard two senior aides. One, Margaret, was trembling and ashen, whispering, "I saw it. I saw what he truly is." By dawn, she'd vanished. No goodbye, no transfer documents, just gone. The weeks that followed grew darker. The East Wing's warm glow would sometimes flicker into a cold, bluish pulse that seemed alive. One night, I caught faint murmurs in a strange, unfamiliar tongue, accompanied by a low, slimy sound that made my skin prickle. I pressed my ear to a thick oak door until the sounds ceased. Through the crack beneath, a shadow glided across the floor, long, sinuous, and impossibly wrong. I fled, but the dread clung to me. The palace grew colder, more sinister. Conversations shortened. Even the Queen seemed distracted, her gaze unfocused. Then I saw him again, the man in the gray suit, alone by the library fireplace. His words were simple, but they felt like a snare. "Do you believe in destiny?" My answer didn't matter. His parting sentence chilled me. "It's closer than you think." I couldn't shake the sense that every corner now watched me, that my every movement was logged. One night, unable to sleep, I followed the whispers. Down the stairwell, the air grew damp and cold, the chanting louder. I reached a heavy iron door, cracked just enough to see the glow inside. Figures in cloaks formed a circle, chanting in a guttural rhythm. On a raised platform lay something human-shaped, its skin shimmering with scales. One voice rose above the others. The figure convulsed and split open. My gasp must have carried. The chanting stopped. Dozens of heads turned toward me in unison. I ran. Their footsteps followed, light but relentless, until I slammed my quarters door shut. From the other side, a low, guttural voice whispered, "You shouldn't have seen that." That night, I understood something vital. Whatever power truly ruled the palace had noticed me, and once they notice you, there is no going back. The moment you realize the mask is not to hide their faces, but to keep you from seeing their true shape, the world stops being familiar and starts becoming prey. Whispers. Music. The days after that night felt heavier, as if the palace itself had shifted against me. Staff moved quickly, voices clipped short, and eyes darted toward corners as if expecting something to emerge. I kept my head down, clinging to routine, though every step felt watched. Then came the moment I saw her, one of the younger aides, sharp-featured, intense. She intercepted me without preamble, pulling me into a dim, unused storage room. Her grip on my arm was firm, her voice urgent. I should never have gone near the East Wing. They'll know you were there, she warned. They always know. Her eyes carried something between pity and fear, a recognition that I'd crossed an invisible threshold. She told me not to ask questions, not to look curious, but when I demanded to know who they were, her gaze flicked to the door, lowering her voice to a whisper that felt too dangerous to repeat. She said they'd been here for centuries, long before the monarchy as we knew it. The family wasn't simply aware of their presence, they were intertwined with it. Bloodlines rituals, deals made before our time, she murmured. And they've made sure no one outside ever finds out. I asked why she was telling me this. Why risk saying anything at all? Her answer was unsettling in its simplicity. Because I've seen it too. Not everything, but enough to know that once you'd witnessed them, there was no undoing it. She urged me to act normal, to avoid the East Wing, to disappear into the daily mechanics of service, but her warning came too late. Curiosity was a fire that would not go out. Before I could press her for more, footsteps passed by the storage room door, and she left as abruptly as she had appeared, leaving the air heavy with unanswered questions. For days afterward, I moved with calculated stillness, doing what I was told, speaking only when necessary. But the tension had a pulse of its own now, beating against my chest each time I turned a corner. I couldn't unsee the glint of scales under flickering light, couldn't unhear that guttural voice through my door. Every whisper among the staff seemed to carry hidden meaning. Then, deep into another sleepless night, the sound returned. Low voices, not footsteps or drafts, but rhythmic chanting seeping up through the floor. It came from the far end of the corridor, from an old stairwell rarely used. The pull toward it was like gravity, equal parts dread and need to know. I descended, each step colder than the last, until the air was damp enough to taste, and the chanting was no longer muffled. It was sharp and deliberate, wrapped in an unfamiliar language that made my skin crawl. At the bottom, a heavy iron door stood ajar. Candlelight spilled through the narrow gap, glinting on the stone floor. I pushed just enough to see inside. Figures in cloaks stood in a ring, their faces hidden. The walls were carved with intricate, ancient symbols, their lines seeming to shift in the candle's flicker. At the center lay something human-shaped yet wrong, its body shimmering faintly. One figure raised its arms, chanting louder. The body jerked unnaturally, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings, until the skin split open to reveal something darker beneath. My breath caught. The chanting stopped instantly, and all heads turned toward me. Silence swallowed the room. One figure began to move in my direction, slow but certain. I tore myself from the doorway, running up the spiral stairs with the sound of footsteps chasing, impossibly light yet relentless. My room was just ahead when I slammed the door shut and locked it, my chest heaving. The handle rattled once, then stilled. Through the wood came a voice, guttural and deep, sliding between syllables I couldn't fully understand, but the meaning was clear. I had crossed into something I wasn't meant to survive. You shouldn't have seen that, it whispered. The sound retreated, leaving me in suffocating quiet. I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner, eyes fixed on the door, knowing the weight of that gaze hadn't gone. By morning, my thoughts were no longer about disbelief. They were about escape. Yet, the idea of leaving without proof felt futile. Who would believe a word of it without evidence? That night's images still burned behind my eyes, but I needed something tangible. I resolved to find it, moving through the next day in silence, listening for scraps of conversation. In the evening, I caught a fragment near the East Wing. Another gathering was planned for the night ahead. The thought made my stomach knot, but the chance was too crucial to ignore. I would see it again, and this time I would not come away empty-handed. Once you've looked directly into the eyes of something that should not exist, you don't return to who you were before. You can't, and the question stops being about what's real. It becomes about how much of reality they let you see. Revelation. Midnight brought with it a silence so absolute that even the palace walls seemed to lean in listening. I left my quarters with deliberate slowness, every step measured against the weight of my decision. The corridors were cloaked in darkness, the sconces extinguished, their absence amplifying the hum of the east wing. It was there again, that deep, resonant vibration that I could feel more than hear. The stairwell was colder this time, the stone steps slick with damp. The closer I came to the iron door, the more the chanting pressed into my chest, its rhythm almost mirroring my heartbeat. I moved carefully, easing the door open until a sliver of light spilled onto my face. What I saw inside rooted me to the spot. A cloaked figure at the center of the ring was not just any participant. It was a senior royal, unmistakable even through the shifting shadows. They removed their cloak with a calmness that was almost ceremonial, their features revealed to the flickering candlelight. The stillness in the room tightened as their skin began to move, not in the way muscles do, but as if it were a thin film stretched over something alive beneath. It rippled, convulsed, then split open, peeling away in strips. From beneath emerged a form elongated and angular, glistening in unnatural shades, with eyes like molten gold cut by vertical slits. The silence after the transformation was suffocating, broken only by the sound of their voice, a distorted layering of tones that came from everywhere at once. I couldn't decipher the words, but their weight was undeniable, and the figures surrounding them listened with the reverence of soldiers before a general. Then came the moment that froze my blood. They spoke my name. It was not shouted, not even spoken loudly, just slipped into the chant like it belonged there. Yet it struck with the force of a hammer. The transformed figure turned its head, and those golden, slitted eyes locked onto me through the narrow opening in the door. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, and when I finally obeyed, the room erupted. The hooded figures moved in jerks too fast to be human, their footsteps gliding more than striking the ground. The chanting shifted, faster and more discordant, pounding into my skull as I fled. The corridors no longer obeyed the architecture I knew. They twisted into new shapes, turning familiar paths into endless loops. Somehow, my panicked steps carried me into the library, the heavy door slamming shut behind me. In the dim glow of the fireplace, my eyes caught on a tall cabinet in the far corner. Its glass doors were etched with the same symbols I had seen in the chamber below, symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly. Inside lay rows of ancient books and one folder, its edges brittle with age. I didn't think, I just grabbed it. But before I could move, the door burst open. The creature from the ritual filled the frame, its elongated form bending to fit the threshold, those eyes burning with something older than malice. Its voice cut through the air. "You do not understand. We are not your enemy. We never were." The words were calm, almost soothing, but the undertone was something primal. I clutched the folder tighter, as if it could shield me. My mind caught between the instinct to run and the compulsion to hear more. It stepped forward with deliberate grace, the shadows curling against its movements. "We were here long before your kind," it continued, "shaping everything you believe for your survival." My voice broke free in a whisper. "What are you?" The slightest curve formed at the corner of its mouth. "The question is not what we are. The question is what you will become." The fireplace flared violently, the light so bright it seared my vision. When the glare subsided, the doorway was empty. I stood trembling in the stillness, the folder warm from my grip. It felt heavier than its size could explain, as if it carried the weight of every secret the palace had ever buried. I forced myself to move, slipping back through the silent corridors toward my quarters. Each step shadowed by the certainty that I was not walking alone. Some truths are not meant to be discovered by chance. They are placed in your path like snares, and once you step into them, the world you knew collapses into something unrecognizable. Exile. Music. Back in my quarters, I locked the door and jammed a chair beneath the handle before finally opening the folder. Inside were photographs in grainy black and white, showing robed figures gathered in circles, their faces hidden or blurred. Notes were scrawled in margins beside diagrams of bloodlines and anatomical sketches that didn't match anything human. There were typed memos marked as top secret, detailing meetings between the monarchy and something called the council, written in a clinical tone that made the horror worse. One document described an arrangement, an exchange of influence and protection for continued integration at the highest levels of power. The last line chilled me. "Do not allow public awareness under any circumstances." My hands trembled as I realized this wasn't just about the palace. It stretched far beyond. Among the pages, I found a much older piece of paper, yellowed and fragile, appearing to be a journal entry. The handwriting was uneven, almost frantic. It described a ceremony, the same kind I had witnessed, in unsettling detail. Their eyes burned with ancient fire. The skin was only a veil. They spoke of dominion and necessity. We are pawns, blind to the strings they pull. Each line dug deeper into my thoughts, confirming what my instincts already knew. This was not an isolated, hidden tradition. It was a system entrenched in history, designed to remain unseen while shaping everything above it. I felt an odd mixture of validation and dread, like holding undeniable proof, but knowing it was too dangerous to exist in my possession for long. Sleep was impossible that night. I paced my room until the first pale light of morning crept through the curtains. Leaving had become the only option, but I knew walking out the main gates would be suicide. My absence would be noted instantly. I thought about the whispers I'd overheard during my time in service, references to hidden passages used in times of crisis. By early dawn, I had packed a small bag, the folder tucked inside. Moving through the palace was like traversing the inside of a living creature, every creak of the floorboard sounding deliberate, each shadow stretching just enough to make me quicken my pace. When I finally slipped into the cold morning air of the gardens, the sky was muted and gray, a fitting shade for my escape. Crossing the grounds felt like wading through water, my senses heightened to every shift of wind, every rustle in the trees. At the outer gate, I stepped into the streets of London without looking back, though I could feel the weight of the palace's gaze lingering on me. My first days in hiding were restless and disorienting. I moved from one anonymous room to another, never staying more than a night, the folder never leaving my sight. In cramped, dim-lit spaces, I studied it over and over, tracing patterns in the diagrams, trying to decode the unfamiliar language scattered throughout the documents. One recurring phrase emerged: the catalyst. The context was sparse, but the tone was unmistakable. It marked a beginning, not an end. The more I read, the more the shape of the truth revealed itself. This wasn't just about maintaining an ancient alliance. It was preparation for something much larger, an event that would shift their relationship with humanity entirely. I thought about exposing it all, handing the evidence to the press or trusted officials. But the thought collapsed under its own weight. How could I be certain the media wasn't already under their control? The memo had mentioned integration at the highest levels. Trusting the wrong person would not just silence me, it would erase me. The decision formed slowly but firmly. The folder had to be hidden somewhere it could not be found unless I wanted it discovered. I chose a location I knew well enough to return to in secret, leaving the documents sealed with instructions that they be released only if something happened to me. Walking away from it was harder than I expected. It felt like abandoning the only weapon I had. From then on, I erased myself. No fixed address, no steady routine, no contact with anyone from my past. Years have passed this way in the margins of society. I've grown used to the feeling of being observed, to strangers whose glances last a heartbeat too long. I tell myself they may have forgotten me, but I know better. They don't forget. They wait. Sometimes late at night, I think about the consequences of breaking the silence. Maybe the world deserves to know what moves beneath its surface, no matter the chaos it would unleash. But then I remember the reach of their influence, police, government, press, and how swiftly they could turn truth into delusion. Speaking out would be a death sentence. And still, there are moments when I look around and wonder how many others walk among us like they do, indistinguishable until it's too late. If the catalyst is yet to come, I fear it will arrive in plain sight, unnoticed by all except those they choose. When they have shaped your history, your leaders, your myths, the question is not if they remain among you. It is whether they have already decided the moment you will cease to matter.